Hey everyone, I'm Buster Green, and I'm back today with another Battle Circuit Deep Dive video for Gundam Breaker Mobile. If you find my videos interesting, please subscribe to my channel. I only need about 400 more subscribers to get monetized and paid for my work by YouTube, which would be great because I have no money coming in right now. Anyway, so here we are again, and in a shocking twist this month, they brought back the Advanced Melee GP from Hell. For those of you unfamiliar with its history, the Advanced Melee GP was the first battle circuit they ever put in this game and tortured us with, all the way back in the faraway time of October 2020. Wow, and things are so different now, right? Yeah, whatever. Well, honestly, I'm a bit annoyed they'd recycle content this fast, but they did put together a completely different lineup for things this time. But the first Advanced Melee GP was completely brutal. In the first Advanced Melee GP, an Epion would show up and it would one-shot you unless you one-shot him first. Now, this time around, the enemies are not so bad. They're a little bit weaker. You have a Rose, which almost never harms you, an H3, which kind of just does pot shots but can be dangerous up close. But honestly, it can't do shit most of the time. Now, on the flip side though, the final boss of this circuit is the God Gundam, which kinda isn't that tough, but it can become very deadly if you give it enough time to charge up to its Super Saiyan level. Anyway, so the first Advanced Melee GP, it fucked with my head pretty bad. I barely got through it and I had to rely on random tips from Smiley and the rest of the online community. And even then, I barely skated by it to finish it in time, so I'm very annoyed seeing it came back this month, but I did want some kind of revenge on it since it messed with me so much the first time, so in a way I'm a little bit happy to take another crack at it too. This should be obvious, but since this is the Advanced Melee GP, pretty much all of your shooter Gundams are nerfed and mostly useless, with a few minor exceptions. Now, first of all, if you have any physical shooter units, especially ones that use grenades, or anything else that does multi-hit splash damage, that might still do enough multi-hit damage to be able to pull off a win. But otherwise, most shooters are going to be pumped into the native stats, and they're going to kind of be useless. Now myself, I ran into 2 rounds, specifically the Overdrive Round and the final round, where I was just pushed too far that I had to resort to shooters, and therefore I made shooters that were so crazy powerful that their high stats negated the stat decrease that this melee circuit puts into play. But anyway, by and large, you're going to want to be doing this with melee units, and melee units kind of suck. I'll get more into that later, though. Anyway, the other problems with this GP are there are 2 skill hack rounds, and typically I have a pretty good skill hack strategy, but my skill hack strategy is usually a shooter strategy. So I had to come up with something different on the spot for this circuit, and honestly, what I came up with for the first skill hack barely worked. What I came up with for the second skill hack worked a little bit better, but that's mostly because by the time I got to the second round, I wasn't really holding back my punches, and I came in a lot stronger. Anyway, as with the first Advanced Melee GP, the Melee GP really highlights the biggest problem of this game, and that is that the melee controls, they suck. It's one of the game's weakest points. Now, ordinarily this isn't a problem since melee moves are more like an expression of your anger than an actual battle strategy, but in a few certain cases like boss rounds and this entire battle circuit, you really have to use melee moves, which ends up being pretty shitty. Because there's not a real melee button, you just kind of do melee attacks if you're tapping an empty part of the screen and you're close enough that your Gundam thinks it makes sense. Also, to make matters worse, you really have to play this battle circuit on manual because most of the game's AIs are going to prioritize using gun attacks. Now, you can get around this by not equipping a gun, however that will give you a stat decrease. Otherwise, if you use a Defender AI, Defender AIs are the absolute best at handling enemy melee attacks, and I had some great results in this circuit using Ramba Rao and Mikazuki. But that being said, the downside to using Defender AIs is they prioritize using blocking first, which typically results in them wasting tons of time blocking and waiting for an opponent to attack. They also throw away a lot of easy chances to get some shots in, and that can be frustrating, especially when you're just sitting there watching them do their thing and do it badly. So that's kind of the basics of the advanced melee battle circuit. Let's move on now to my round by round breakdown and see how I did. Round 1, Advanced Melee. So, as usual, I had a pretty hard time sliding into things. Now, I put together a pretty crazy build to start with. The Giant Wrench is one of my favorite melee EX skills ever, so I'm a bit surprised I had to use it so early. But if I'm being honest, it's become a little bit obsolete over time, so better to use it early than to not use it at all. The Double Saber Rush, on the other hand, was really disappointing. That move's inaccurate as hell. The leg grenades did work out for me because of the splash damage though, so that was cool. Nickname, Gimpy Zeta. Round 2 for Desert. So I pretty much put together a very hardcore Ifrit build this round. The new Xeon legs are there for the stats, but otherwise this build is all Ifrit. Now the exam system pops in and then the heat saber cuts through the enemies like butter. I also brought along the Muramasa blade, but I've never used that skill, and to this day I still haven't figured out how to use it, so I couldn't use it. Nickname, Ifrit Red Destiny. Round 3, Skill Hack. Okay, holy crap, you guys. Now, it took me almost an hour to workshop this round and get through it, and Chris Last was very, very unpleased with how I did. He wrote me a very long letter telling me how bad I did, so sorry Chris, I know I failed you. Anyway, Chris pointed out that I made an absolutely huge mistake by using offense up beta, which doesn't actually affect your unit, it affects your teammates in multiplayer. So, whoops. Anyway, yeah, I messed that up. I thought it wasn't working because I was getting shot at every time I tried to use it, but on the flip side, using Berserker mode from the Noble Gundam actually worked out pretty good for me. Now, he also recommended I try to use a different stun part over the anchor shot, but if I'm being honest, I just like the anchor shot. I think it looks cool. Now, the biggest issue I had here was just that to get through this round, you have to play the game manually, and that is extremely hard to do. Nickname, Berserker Anchor Freak. Round 4, Advanced Beam Mode. So, this ended up probably being one of the coolest builds I put together in this entire circuit. It's a very classic Flying Gundam build. Now, it's covered in beam sabers in almost every place that works, and that being said, it had enough raw power to kill the Age and the Rose on its own with just hard attacks. Now, I used up all the EX skills on it fighting the God Gundam, and I have to say they somewhat floundered. Despite that, the suit pressed on with its otherwise overwhelming raw power. Nickname, Gundam with 7 beam sabers. Round 5, Mobile Fighter 1. So I've gotten a little bit used to battle circuits, and I knew if there was one Mobile Fighter round, there would be another one a week later in round 14. Now, I put together, therefore, a very, very fun Rising Gundam build. Since I recently maxed out most of the Rising Gundam's parts in a recent event, I paired it with the GN Sword 4, which used the God Gundam's Bakunetsu sword for some extra offense, but otherwise this is not too far from the vanilla Rising Gundam. Now, the beam arrow was obviously completely nerfed by the melee rules. I just kind of kept using it because I thought it would help me out, but honestly it didn't. Defense hack worked really good taking down the God, and the Bakunetsu sword had some pretty good recovery. Nickname, Ruthless Rising Gundam. Round 6, Switch Mode 1. So, this build is very average, all things considered, but I had it here to specialize melee defense parts. And it ended up with a weird coincidence of having several high damage but low accuracy EX skills, with the worst defender being Spinning Rave. Now, Screwfang was great, but it was very inaccurate and only worked if I was right in front of my enemy. Otherwise, it would kind of veer off target. Junie Oho on my back otherwise was my most accurate move, but it wasn't my strongest move, so I really struggled getting this build to work because it also had no offense. If I'm being honest, I kinda only beat the stage with dumb luck since most of the enemies spawned right in my face, and then I knocked them down right away. Nickname, Glass Scarecrow. Round 7, Advanced Physical. So this build consists of lots of my favorite parts, so I thought it would come out a little bit stronger, but it didn't. Despite that though, it had some absolute beastie EX skills, and I did the best I could with what I gathered up. Now, meanwhile, the halberd throw, that completely saved my ass, and Briticle did its job okay. Strum on Drag, on the other hand, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with, so it missed because I just didn't know how to use it. But yeah, here, the halberd throw saved my ass because it regenerated just so fast, and it one-hit killed the Rose and the God. Nickname, 00 Dark Shadow. Round 8, Protag 1. So this is another fun and semi-dignified build. Now, the Noble Gundam's Burning Finger continued to save me in another pinch hit situation, while the Epion's Max Output Blast missed the mark and let me down yet again. Now, I saved the Victory's Wings of Light as my final sure kill EX attack to get me through the stage, but unfortunately they underperformed. But luckily Burning Finger had regenerated to that point, so that carried me out of the round. Now, this was another one and done victory, but if you noticed, I'm not subparting my red parts because I think I have enough power to get away with them, and I didn't want to waste any more good skills, good parts subparting. Nickname, Darkwing Gundam. Round 9, Overdrive 1. So, advanced melee or not, with Overdrive you need to hit the enemy as much as you can. So I prioritize using multi-splash physical damage from the Sazabi's grenades in the shield, and that worked out pretty ideally. Now, this ended up being a very solid mixed attacker using the Sazabi shield to erase grunts, and keeping the Arandite in my backhand to assassinate the God Gundam. This led to another quick and satisfying run. Nickname, Moosha Unicorn. Round 10, Advanced Skill. So, I always appreciate the Nightingale. I think it's one of the craziest and best Gundams ever designed, and it looks like absolutely nothing else in the franchise. Now, despite farming out the entire Nightingale over a couple of Sokais this year, I never actually fully assembled it until now. And I gotta say, it was a wonderful experience. Now, I put the composite shield on it as an emergency backup shooting skill, but that didn't work out. But in a shocking and fun twist, the Nightingale's gigantic beam saber had such a huge area of effect that because the Nightingale itself is just so big, it got me a double kill, and that got me the win. Nickname, Full Nightingale. Alright, now we're moving into round 2. Round 11, for Desert 2. So let's just roll right into the second half. With my second half, most of my builds had a much higher raise in quality, so I had a hard time assembling this first one due to limited options on the 4 Desert tag, but I came up with something slightly decent. Now, the Abominable Missiles worked out, and the Saber Boomerang saved my butt when I was surrounded. Rambarel, as always, overperforms and is probably the best defensive pilot in the game, especially since he also carries the 4 Desert tag. Finally, I equipped the Ho-Oh Howkin to take out some of the bosses, but ultimately, I think I got this win mostly due to Rambarel and having a lot of power with him. Nickname, Desert Unicorn Gundam. Round 12, Seal Hack 2. Okay, so I straight up love the suit visually. It very much screams Titan Test Team, and it was a weird combo of Blue and Zeta era parts. But anyway, when I popped in Mikazuki, he gave me so much defense that combining that with the exam system made the suit really pop. Combining that with the invincible limit break shield, this was a very risky strategy, but it overall paid off. Nickname, Blue Titan's Rabbit. Round 13, Advanced Beam 2. So it took me a little while to nail down what this suit was because it's very super hodgepodge. It's barely a Unicorn Gundam and more of just a mess. Anyway, it overall was an EX skill spammer with a pretty high base stat, and that was really all it had going for it. Nickname, Junkyard Unicorn. Round 14, Mobile Fighter 2. So, the system keeps suggesting for me in this battle circuit that I use the Gundam Spiegel. And I get that that is probably a good idea, and I don't want to dismiss that, but that's a suit I just recently got, and I'm completely unfamiliar with how it works. On top of that, my parts for it are completely unleveled, and I didn't really feel motivated to upgrade them because I'm not familiar with the suit yet. So I ended up just dressing up the raw Spiegel parts with the OP God Gundam parts I had, and that worked out, and I overall got some OP stats. Anyway, with that in play, it pretty much became the God Gundam in all the areas that mattered, so nickname, German God Gundam. Round 15, Switch Mode 2. So, I bet you were expecting to see my Switch Mode High New Gundam again, huh? Well, instead, because of this melee garbage in place, you're only going to see the legs. Otherwise, this thing is mostly a 00 Exian build. And yeah, those suits have the highest melee defense in the game, so here they are. Nickname, Switch Mode High Exia. Round 16, Advanced Physical 2. So, as we moved into the last 5 rounds, my build started to get very, very OP. And a lot more fun. You know, now I'm diving into the deep end of the pool, and this is totally one of those. Now, I did somehow get overwhelmed by the rows the first time I played, so I was much more careful the second time taking this thing out. Now, it's overall a shining finger spammer, and this was also the first time I've ever used the Vidar's leg. I've heard really good things about them, and I always see them all the time in multiplayer, and yeah, they were definitely perfect for this build. Nickname, Shining Wing Zero. Round 17, Protag 2. Okay, so this time, since we were nearing the end of the CPU's OP recommendation, I ran the stage twice. The first time I did it, I was very inexperienced using the 00 Sky's sword skill, so I messed it up. But I came back in, and when I knew how to use it, I was able to shave a minute off of my time. Otherwise, this is your pretty typical OP EX skill assassin build. Nickname, OP Astray Red. Round 18, Overdrive. Okay, so this is another round I ran twice. My first build was way too OP, so I toned it down a little and came back in for a second run. That being said, I saved some of the EX skills from my original build for my final build, but Overdrive was still in play, so I came out here with a rapid shooter. And, you know, a bunch of rapid EX skills, that was all. Fuck advanced melee. Overdrive is just too much trouble for me. Nickname, War Wing Gundam. Round 19, Advanced Skill 2. So, this is the Advanced Melee GP, and this here is pretty much my ultimate melee build, with a melee attack of 38,000. Now, this isn't the best melee build I could build, but it's the best melee build I could build at this point after I'd wasted most of my other good melee skills. Now, combine that with a number of high-profile EX skills, and yeah, I overall made a decent high-speed assassin build. Nickname, Astray Red Dark Matter. So, finally, round 20, and in round 20, I had just had it with advanced melee, so on the bright side, I had all my best shooting parts left over because I never used them, so I made the shooter to end all shooters, to end out the advanced melee GP that forbid shooters. Off-brand, totally. Effective, fuck yeah. Now this build is pretty much the skeleton of my current shooter main, and it rocks a shooting attack of 37,000. Now there's not much else to praise about it, but it was definitely another hardcore rapid shooter, and it was a stylish way to end off the advanced melee GP. Nickname, Shot Defense Man 0. Alright guys, so that's my run of the advanced melee GP. I kicked its ass. I feel a lot better that I kicked its ass. I feel a lot better that I kicked its ass completely on my own, with all my own shit. So yeah, one and done guys. That's how you do it. If you like this video, please subscribe again, I really do need those extra 400 subscribers. Alright, you guys. Peace out. Catch you later. Bye.